Welcome to another episode of the Carpe Fide podcast, where if the shoe fits, you wear it.
And if the truth hurts, you bear it.
I am Justin Gruber.
And I am Jesse Gruber.
And today we hope you will seize the faith. Welcome to another episode of the Carpe Fide podcast, where tonight we're joined by a special guest, the one and the only Sergeant John Cooper. How are you, John?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Jesse, you?
I am fantastic.
Awesome.
For 11:30 at night.
Well, it's 11:30 when we're recording, but maybe even earlier for when you're listening. Nonetheless, we hope that you can, well, hopefully it's at least not too convoluted.
I would love to know if I am the last thing that someone hears before they go to bed. That would be
terrifying.
That'd be interesting. Maybe we should start a lullaby podcast, Justin. You know, we could like a soundscape type.
Just gonna sing lullabies?
No, we would speak them like
a late night radio host, like a soothing voice where we
yeah.
Okay.
Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall.
I don't think nursery rhymes are the same as lullabies, though.
And all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. You know, it never mentions in the rhyme that he's an egg. You ever think about that?
Yeah, it doesn't. You could sing military cadences for lullabies too.
Sure,
yeah. Today.
Yeah, man.
Left, right, kill. Left, right. I think I will.
I listen to this guy that does military cadences, and
the Winnie the Pooh guy.
The Winnie the Pooh guy.
You guys haven't heard that one? Oh man, I'll send it to you later.
Winnie the Pooh guy.
It's an off-air one. It's a military. It's an off-air one.
The Yogi Bear one.
Yeah, that's the one. I meant.
Yogi Bear and Winnie the Pooh are two totally different. Totally different.
What time is it again?
You know, just imagine.
Hey, boo boo. Hey, range
left, right,
yes,
left.
It's so good, Jeff.
Hey,
young, that you, Winnie? Boo boo. Winnie?
Oh my gosh.
I want to do the whole thing now as Yogi Bear. It's going to throw everybody.
Drop and give me 50, Piglet.
Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about Jonny Mac hot takes and PTSD. And so we have brought John Cooper on to give us definitely some more firsthand experience in the realm of combat. So we're thankful that he's willing to jump on with us at 11:30 at night and take a break from writing a very what we're going to just say is probably tome at this point for his studies. What are you writing on currently, John?
I am writing a paper for my seminary class on the Crusades, and the paper is how the Crusades, the first Crusades specifically, give us how Christian nations can ally together and aid each other in warfare, and what that would look like, and what it looked like in history, especially in the First Crusade, but then what it would look like now in the same context. So
awesome. Well,
I would love to know how to get rid of some of those Muslim countries over there, man.
When you get that F because of what you wrote about, it won't be because the paper's bad. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, the professor and I already went back and forth in the beginning, and I basically have had to steal my entire argument because I know he's already from the get-go is not going to want to hear it. But it is what it is.
Steal with two E's, not steal with an EA. Just so we're all
yes. Well, I would also like to steal it if someone else wrote one.
Yeah, I don't think Chat GPT is going to write you something on the Crusades.
Not on that one.
I think that breaks its algorithms there, bud.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, in addition to the things that Justin mentioned, and as far as why we wanted to have John on the podcast, John not only has served but also serves as the director of the Niagra Gospel Mission, and so he works with I was going to say largely a homeless population, but also perhaps some people who have experienced maybe perhaps some post-traumatic stress, and that is going to be our topic of discussion today, or perhaps he knows other people. So looking for insights from all the corners of the situation here, and I know John has a heart for helping, and so I wanted to get his perspectives, because Johnny Mac said some things that we would that we would just wanted to talk about for a little bit.
And of course, we want to preface this with the fact that although I don't agree with John MacArthur on everything, we hold the core doctrines, and he is a brother in Christ, and he's also a pastor, and so I always want to extend pastoral grace.
He's more like a grandpappy in Christ, brother. He is our grandpappy.
But we're going to be looking at a comment that was made on a panel at the For the Valley church conference situation. And so it is a clip, and we're going to be talking about the context, well, more so the content of the clip, but I don't want to pull out of context. I don't want to say, I don't just come across as like, well, we don't like Johnny Mac. We're very appreciative for those that have gone before us in the faith to do a large biblical work, and Johnny Mac certainly is numbered in that. So I wanted to get that right off the top.
He has done some things,
a great many things.
Yep.
So
do you want me to cue that up? Was that my cue to cue that up?
I think it gives us the best leeway into what we're going to talk about. I think if I was going to,
I'm down with the sickness, brother. I just needed the word. You ready?
Was this okay with you, John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm along for the ride.
John's like, not my podcast. Alrighty. All right. So here's Johnny Mac. We got about 2 minutes of some discussion here with a very concerned looking Costy hen in the background as well.
There's no such thing as PTSD. There's no such thing as OCD. There's no such thing as ADHD. Those are noble lies. To basically give the excuse to, in the end of the day, to medicate people. And Big Pharma is in charge of a lot of that. If you understand, take PTSD, for example. What that really is grief. You are fighting a war, you lost your buddies, you have a certain amount of survival guilt because you made it back, they didn't. How do you deal with the grief? Grief is a real thing. But grief is part of life. And if you can't navigate grief, you can't live life. But if you clinically define that, you can give them a pill, a series of medications, and they end up in LA homeless on the sidewalk. This is in regard to children, it's the most deadly thing that's been unleashed on children, medication. We're trying to make clear to parents that behavior is essentially the result of choices that kids make. And if you parent them properly, they'll make right choices. But if you blame it on something other than their choices, and you identify them as having something they can't do anything about, but medicate it, you literally are turning your child into a potential, not only a potential drug addict, but maybe a potential criminal, because they never learn how to navigate life in a socially acceptable way.
That was the clip.
Yes, and well, I think as we were kind of gearing up, you had a pretty good understanding, John. Why don't you kick us off with your initial thoughts as you experiencing the clip?
Yeah, I mean, so I work on both sides of what he's talking about, and so have experienced. I do agree with him in the sense that PTSD is not the best terminology. I prefer the term PTS, disorder. If you see the things that people, not just in combat, but car accidents and things that have almost killed you, whatever it is, you experience post-traumatic stress most of the time, and it hits everyone differently, but it is not a disorder because you experience that. That's actually quite normal that your body experiences that. So to treat it as if like I've seen people get blown up in front of me, that affects me. If that doesn't affect me, I think I have something wrong with me.
Yeah, like a sadist or something, like a.
Yeah, exactly. So the disorder part, I completely agree that should not be part of that term. It should be post-traumatic stress. And then I also work on the other side where he's talking about people getting hooked on pills and then become homeless. Though I'm not in LA, that's what I do for a living. I work with homeless people, and specifically targeting homeless veterans to get them in through our program, through our recon program is what we call it. So, yeah, I think, Master's University, Master's Seminary is big in the biblical counseling world. And in biblical counseling, one of the things they do is they attempt to phrase all of what we would call disorders through the DSM-5 and the preceding DSMs into a biblical lens. So what he's saying with PTS is grief, though I would disagree with maybe it being grief. I would put it in suffering. I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to say what the word PTS is not in the Bible. What is in the Bible that describes the same thing? And he sees grief as the category. And so when he counsels from the scripture, he's saying, okay, we're going to go with grief. And what does the Bible have to now say about grief? And that's how we minister to someone's soul. So I understand what he's saying when he says that, when he says OCD is not a real thing. He's saying, what's the biblical category for that thing? The symptoms, because OCD and PTS, they describe symptoms, right? All the DSM-5, that's what it does. ADHD is not a disease, right? It's just describing what's going on. It's a hyperactive kid, like it didn't really tell me anything. I know the kid's hyperactive. I live with him.
Surprise.
Yeah, exactly. So it's describing a symptom, and that helps to find the root cause. But, just saying what the symptom is doesn't really tell you anything. And I think, and that's what the biblical counseling world, that's how they come at these mental disorders. So I think that just gives a little context of why he's approaching it that way. I don't agree with how he just kind of blanketly said it and didn't just put that on there, because then people are like, the heck you mean it's not real? I have it. So
it's a noble lie was his phrase.
Yeah. So, I can speak from my experiences with fighting PTS. I don't know how helpful that will be, but and what we do to help. But I do think that that's what is behind his statement and saying, hey, what they're doing is they're trying to label something so they can give you a pill. Pills don't give hope. They just numb the symptom. And so I do think pills are good in the sense that we can get them to a point where we can work on their heart issues, or whatever other issues. If it is a physical issue, they need to not be on psychiatric medication. They need to be on medication for that physical issue. But I don't think pills are the answer. So.
Yeah.
Good, Jess. Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, I think like there's a couple things that I think we can all agree on. First one is that we are all probably not fans of Big Pharma, correct? In terms of how they operate, what their goals are, how there is a pill for literally everything.
I literally remember a time when I went to the doctor and I just believed what he said.
Those days are long gone, my friend.
Long
Those were the
time
good
ago.
old days. Yeah.
Oh my
Now the
God.
doctors are my enemy. Gut health is my only friend. But so yeah, I agree. I mean, in terms of what he was saying with these diagnoses and prescribing medication, Johnny Mac's absolutely right. I mean, people, the industry looks for problems to solve with medications. Christians look for problems, or Christians see and experience problems, and we know that the solution's in Christ and in His Word, and that will ultimately give hope, and that is the only power to change lives. So I agree with that aspect of what Johnny Mac was saying, but I agree also that it was a bit overstated, like a bit of a blanket kind of there, super wet, heavy blanket, just kind of thrown, because
Not the fire, so had to put the wet blanket over it.
because traumatic experiences do have an effect on us, because we are humans, and we are broken people, and the life can throw out vast amounts of stress, and trauma that needs to be handled biblically and under the care of good shepherds. But that's not to say that those effects or experiences, after the fact, aren't real.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know if perhaps he just misspoke or whatever, but it came off kind of a funny way. I heard that, I'm like, oh well, that's not right. I mean, of course that's real. I mean, we've been studying this since World War I, and people get really jacked up when traumatic things happen. Whether that's sexual abuse, or whether that's coming home from war. So I mean, there's kind of a wide range of symptoms to that category of thing, that PTS that John was talking about. It can look like a lot of different things in a lot of different people, depending on that traumatic experience. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely real. I think the question, and I think the thing we would probably agree with Johnny Mac on, is that the solution is in Christ and His Word, ultimately, for that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And to just give you an example of that, I can just speak from my own experience, whatever that's worth. When I first realized I had an issue, I didn't think I had an issue with it when I first got back from deployment. I got out of the Army. Everything was good. I met Jesse and Justin on the Carpe Fide podcast. I mean, life was like as high as it could possibly be.
That was your peak, John.
That was my peak. It's all been downhill since.
That was our peak too, really.
Yeah, honestly.
So I started having dreams of being just covered in blood, with weapons in my hand, killing enemies, and I would wake up to just an over sense of joy, like pure joy would cover my body. And I knew after like 4 or 5 times having that dream, I was like, there is something wrong with me. And
probably the appropriate reaction, John. I must say.
Yeah. And I said, okay, what have I become? And in reading the scriptures, I was like, okay, I am the man of violence, like the man who Psalms and Proverbs would describe as someone who lies in wait and loves violence, right? That's what I had become. Another example was last 4th of July. My family was away, and I had to stay back for work. I had to stay at home. So they were with my parents on a little vacation. And fireworks were going on all around me. For whatever reason, that day, typically a firework, if I know it's coming, I'm okay. If it just happens, I like start to freak out. Like one time I was driving, and if someone lit off a firework, and I thought it was like a roadside bomb, so my wife is with me. I slam on the brakes and reach for my M4. Of course, I don't have an M4. I'm just like reaching, and then when you just reach down here, if a cop's looking, it's like, what the heck? Yes. It's just like those experiences just like come. So on the 4th of July, I'm laying there, fireworks are going off, and I'm like shaking. I just can't handle it. And then just a few days ago, it's the anniversary of one of my buddies who was killed. I didn't realize the date, but my body felt depressed. So I say all that until I realized the date. I'm like, why do I feel this way? And then I looked, I was like, oh, it's April 29th. So I say all that to say, to think that it doesn't have a physical effect on you is not to understand it. It definitely has a physical effect. I mean, when you're lying there and fireworks are going off and you're like, what is going on? Kind of sweating. I was just sweating profusely, laying on the ground with one of my firearms to protect myself. Cause I'm like, for whatever reason, I don't know why I think someone's coming after me, but I do. But where he's right is the sense that what I did is I went to, I'm going to turn there now. I started praying and I went to Psalm 46. And as I was reading Psalm 46, which is a very short, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's just, God is our refuge and our strength, our very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam. And so I just started reading Psalm 46, over and over out loud. And in the beginning, a sense of dread, like real dread that we would feel on combat operations, came upon me. And I just kept reading and praying. And then a peace came over me, because that's what God's word does to our souls. Psalm 42, again, why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, right? And so the power of the word, what I didn't need to do is run to the VA for a pill, right? But that came from, since I was having those dreams, what we call in our line of work with working with vets is like contextualizing or converting the trauma, understanding exactly what it is in God's eyes, and building a solid foundation so that way when you come upon these times, you can run to God's word in the midst of the trial.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, outside of acknowledging the physical response in a real way, I mean, that's essentially what biblical counseling calls us to do, right? I mean, that's that's the whole role. I think where we've gotten off is that we have taken psychology out of the church. At its core, the word psyche in Latin comes back to the soul. Mm-hmm. It's soul care. It's care.
Look who's classical educating right now, huh?
Sorry. Apparently, we only work in Latin here on the Carpe Fide podcast. Whether the declension is right or not, bootleg Latin. But when you're talking about the care of the soul, the appropriate place for the care of the soul to happen is inside of Christ's church. And to then understand, I mean, there's so many factors, so as when you're putting it into the context, and this is why I was careful to kind of preview our thoughts before we even watch the clip, is because John MacArthur is appropriately speaking towards the over medication, right?
The over medication.
That's not what that's
is that Latin too, or
yes.
Over medication.
Latin lay. The over medication for prescribed for diagnosed disorders. And as soon as we're putting it into this very clinical terms, that's all we're doing. We're giving it away. The DSM exists so that we can code something appropriately, so that we can bill something correctly. That's essentially why we have those manuals. It's to give credence to a whole industry. And, for whatever reason, that is very important in those industries. The reality is, when you're talking about things like ADHD and OCD, they're all things that we have experienced with either ourselves or someone else in our lives, and predominantly at young ages with, if you're a parent, you've experienced these things. The reality is a lot of them do require truth to come to bear, and discipline and care and nurturing, and not pills. And he's very right. He's very right in this. That is the call again of the scripture. But when it comes to something like post-traumatic stress, we're talking about a very physiological reaction to very specific trauma, and that is of a much more different category. I mean, I did say before, like ADHD essentially defines every male under the age of 35. Hyperactive with an inability to control their impulses. I don't know, like it's all.
We used to call it young and dumb.
Yeah, we still do. Except now we give them pills. There's a reality. There's so few. Like I can think of specific names. When I look at my two sons, they are so different. One of my sons is normal, and they would certainly be classified as ADHD. And one of my sons is not normal, and for some reason, that's not something he has. But he's the weirdo. Like he's the weird one, not my other son. My other son, totally. Like I know I relate to it. Like the odd thing for my older son is, like when he does something like that would be stereotypical boy, young, barely a teenager. Like when he does something stereotypical, I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Right? Because like it's out of character for him. When my younger son acts like a insane male child, like I'm like, yeah, no, that's what he does. That's just him. Like it's what we all are. And so then we just throw medication at a problem that we should be nurturing and disciplining. But there's a difference when the physiological reaction, I think, comes in. And I think you were accurately like just giving us the very real, clear details of that from your own experience. It's just true. Like it's true. There's a real response there. And ultimately, as you said, it takes training and discipline to be able to even turn to the right truth in order to put that trauma into the context it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, especially working with vets, we understand battle drills, so we understand what battle drill 1, battle drill 2, battle drill 6. Your soldiers, your even your very basic soldier knows what those are. So when we teach how to deal with trauma, that's what we do. We teach battle drills. Okay, these feelings are coming on. You're having these memories. You're feeling this way. What's a battle drill I can take with me? That in that moment, this is the step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 in fighting that. But it takes time. And I think what, the biblical counseling world rightly fights that fight of, I had a conversation with a guy who was telling me his son has I can't remember the name of the disorder, but it was like hyper defiance disorder. And he won't listen to me because he has hyper defiance disorder. It's not that he's in sin and won't honor his father and mother. It's that he has hyper defiance. He can't help it. He just has a disorder. So he's not going to listen to me.
Your child's unique.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, there's the right fight that we're getting to that point where even sin now is just a disorder, but then we can swing the pendulum so hard that we ignore the fact that these are very real things. And they take time because everyone wants the quick fix. I can go to Burger King and get my burger made in 5 minutes. I don't have to,
Did you use the air quotes?
Burger. Yeah. But if I don't have that doesn't work for everything.
Right.
And so when I'm fighting my trauma, and my reaction to it, I have to go through hard steps to do the work, and it takes time. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have the patience, so they end up committing suicide, or they just drink themselves, or they just take all the pills. They never actually get better. They just numb the circumstances until, like John MacArthur said, they're in my shelter. And now we're going to work on it because you're in the shelter, and you're meeting Sergeant Cooper. So,
yeah, right. Yeah, there are definitely several, at least, that I can think.
Jesse
I
froze.
believe,
We lost him.
Jesse, you're frozen. It was gonna be.
Frozen in time.
am I back? Are you guys all here?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Hey.
Can you try again? Because I'm sure it was
Okay.
profound.
Yeah, it was not. I was just mentioning that there are definitely certain there are certain psych diagnoses that are sin issues, right? Like John, I think what you were referencing is something called oppositional defiant disorder,
Okay.
or oppositional defiance disorder. There's also like they call it borderline personality disorder, but really it's just someone who's extremely manipulative and selfish. You know, so like there are like literal psych diagnoses that are just, you know, you didn't discipline your kid well enough, you know, disorder.
My parents
But
called that get the paint stick disorder.
yeah, yeah,
Time
get
to
the
get a
pain stick
whooping
disorder.
disorder.
Yeah.
Or for Jesse, the lock him in his room for 5 minutes, even with the door open, not
Yeah,
lock.
the pain stick didn't work. I think
Nope.
it's because you beat on me so much that, you know, I was just
Yeah, that's
numb to the
probably it.
pain.
I traumatized you so much physically that just with the door cracked, you lost your mind. It was good. It just that
Yes.
separation anxiety.
Solitary confinement. I
Solitary.
was not
That's it.
okay with that. It was a much more effective disciplinary tool. But John, I did have a question, because there is a lot of debate and discussion within the Christian community that I've seen just float around the internet. But I'm curious as to what your broad thoughts are on the topic of whether or not Christians, or really anybody, can use some medications to help with certain diagnoses or certain things going on in their life. Think of like depression, or, you know, perhaps PTSD, like what we're talking about now. Like some people are a hard no, some people are all in, some people are somewhere in the middle. I'm curious. I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing what your thoughts are, working with people who are affected by these, and going through it yourself and with your friends.
Yeah. I think it's very easy to take a hard road on either side. But I do think everyone is different. In my experience, at least, there are some people um, who are so out of control physically. Um, Whatever, either if we're going specifically on the PTS route, um, whatever happened to them really has gotten to a point where it's affecting everything. Um, and they need medication to get them to a calm state, where you can actually start to work on the heart problems and then wean off of the medication. And I've seen that happen. Um, I've also seen people, again, who are just, they're on the medication because um, they feel good because they have a disorder. So there's a victimhood thing there. Um, and they want medication to numb the pain. So they'll come up, you know, they just do it because they want to numb the pain. They don't want to actually deal with the problem. Which is what John MacArthur is saying, where it's like, hey, this is part of life. Like, we have to deal with this. Jesus was, suffered and was well acquainted with grief. He was the man of sorrows. So I would say that the goal is to get off the medication. But if you need the medication to get you there, then take the medication. And really, at the end of the day, I know we joked around about I used to be able to trust the doctor, but I mean, if someone asks me what the opinion is, I say go to a doctor. Like I'm not a doctor. I don't. What I don't want to do is someone who really needs medication to tell them get off the medication. Now, I have seen, and this is not a norm by any means, but we had a guy staying with us who he was AOT. I don't know if they have that in New Jersey, where it's like these guys were like, you got to track them down, and they are a very watchful eye, because of a lot of their mental. Go ahead.
Just to be clear, he's staying at the mission with you, not in your home.
Correct. Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
correct.
guys. I just wanted.
Yeah.
I knew what you meant by that. I just didn't want anyone to get freaked out. Okay.
Yeah. No, he's not staying in my home. So he would get to a point where it would go, his shot would wear off that they gave him. And when he was getting to about 5 hours to where he needed his shot, he would be begging. Like I've never seen anyone beg so hard for his medication. And as it got closer, we had to actually confine him because he would slam his head into lockers and weeping, give me my shot, please, I need my shot. And we had to confine him until the medical professionals came and gave him the shot. So someone like that, the answer can't just be, hey, Pete, just stop your meds. You know what I mean? Like,
you've got a prayer problem, Pete.
yeah, exactly. I think your problem is mommy doesn't love you enough. And, once you understand she actually loves you, you'll be fine. Like that doesn't work for him. Right. But is there a point where he could get off? I mean, I didn't know his condition. Does he have something that's actually wrong with his brain? Because that's a whole different story. That's not depression. That's an actual like brain function that's physically wrong. I mean, or is he being, to throw it out, is he being tormented by demons, not possessed, but tormented
right
by a demon? And the meds numb that torment until when the meds wear off, the demon's torment can last. And again, I don't know. We prayed for him, a lot, and it's just like, but that was Pete's lot in life, and I hope he's in a facility now where he's under 24-hour surveillance. He's not in our facility anymore. He's in more of like a government facility for that. But so I see these things, and I'm just like, you can't just not medicate these people. You can't just stop it. But the goal with someone who has depression, right, would be to be off that medication, and to be living in a way where you're depending on God. But getting there, you may need medication. And that would be between you, your counselor, and your doctor, or you, your pastor / counselor, and your doctor. So,
yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I think
Jess, did you want to answer that? Oh, good, you're good to answer it.
Oh, answer what?
The question that you asked John. I figured it was only fair.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I would agree. I think, and I probably speak for you. I feel like we're somewhere in the middle as well. I don't think that medication, generally, again, I'm not, I don't need anybody saying, well, what about this case? Like, look, generally, medication can be helpful, because we are physical beings, right? We are physical beings. We are also spiritual beings. There's that duality that we're talking about here. And there are physical mechanisms that can go wrong, and medication can help provide relief for some of those things that go wrong, right? But I think the problem with the way that medication's looked at by society as a whole, and certainly with Big Pharma running the show, is that medication is viewed as the fix instead of viewed as something that can give me relief and process what's going on so that I can think a bit more clearly, so that I can rest in God more fully, because my mind is not so clouded that I can't function. I think back to when Mom was depressed. That was certainly the view that her and my dad and the counselors took with her, is that she was, without those helps, she was completely incapacitated mentally and physically, to the point where she couldn't physically or mentally rest in God, because her mind was so confused and clouded and shrouded in darkness that there was no pulling her out of that. But with the help of both medication and pastoral counseling, there were reprieves where the things she knew to be true could actually be helpful to her, and through those processes, she was able to rest in the Lord and not rely on medication. I think we have to view medication more as an assistant, necessarily more than a cure. I work in an ER, so I see psych when it's at its worst, when it's when it's not controlled, to the point where we're physically restraining people and chemically restraining people with medications. But people with disordered minds can be extremely dangerous, both to themselves and to other people. And I've seen, I mean, in healthcare, we get hurt all the time from patients with psychiatric illness. But the problem is that they are without Christ and without a church community, these people are just in this loophole, the spiraling toilet drain of medications and psychotherapies and ERs, and medications and psychotherapies and ERs. And that is their life. And really that life is depressing. Many of them stop taking medications because they don't like how it makes them feel. And they don't have that spiritual care piece to help pull them out of that. They just have that cycle, and that's all that they have. And so that is a really hopeless place to be in. I think that if I were in that situation, I would probably be pretty messed up as well. But the work of the church and the work of missions like yours, John, is to break that cycle and to offer that hope, so that people can rest in Christ and their minds can be renewed, right, with the word and with the truth. I don't think it's unintentional, obviously, that the Bible calls us to have our minds renewed. Yeah. God knows our minds are broken. God knows that sin wrecks our minds, and he knows that they need to be renewed. And he's the one that can do that, So yeah, I think of medication more as a bridge, but I think it's unfortunate that so many people don't have that church community, that religious community aspect where their cycle's never broken.
I think everything must be couched in the realm of the fact all things are to lead to the glory of God. And so when you understand that, it changes the world of how and why we engage with particular medications anyway. And it puts it into the realm that both of you are speaking of. If a medication's purpose is to most effectively enable someone to interact with the glory of God, then at that point, the goal is always the glory of God. And the goal is never the medication itself. And it has to be the right goal, because that allows us to not see the medication as any type of cure, because a medication at any point is simply a mask that we put over an issue. It aids us in a particular way so that the effects of a physical condition are either removed, eliminated, or at least dissipate somewhat. But the goal being not to take medication, the goal being to properly see and understand the glory of God in his creation. And when we put it into that proper context, we can see that we want to use all things for the glory of God. And that includes medication that can enable someone who's having a physiological issue to move beyond the effects of that physiological issue into a realm where they can actually access the truth and the glory of the Creator. And that's the whole point. So
yeah, a couple months ago we did a event for local churches called Soul Care for Veterans, and it was teaching local churches, because one thing we've discovered is that some local churches are intimidated. As I've gone around and spoke to pastors, a lot of them are kind of intimidated to hop in the realm of PTS in their counseling. And I've been asked, what happens when the vet comes in who's drunk and is about to kill himself, which happens more often than we'd like to, acknowledge. And so I think that the church, that's why we've started to do a lot of these trainings and partnering with some of the chaplains I know, for local churches, because it's like, hey, you guys, the community aspect of it is huge. That biblical community is huge in this fight, and you are the biblical community. So let's get up to speed on on some of the and it really isn't hard. It's not that it's a hard thing, but I understand it's intimidating. So get some confidence. You're a pastor, and
Right.
and let's hop in there.
Your whole job is to care for souls. That's the whole idea.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And when someone comes into your church and says they're basically putting their soul in your hands, then, well, they've at least come to the right place, because you can point them to the person who really does hold the soul in his hands.
He's got the whole soul in his hands. I think that the people that take a hard line, now this is a generality. I think that the people that take a hard line no against medication for lack of a better term, psychiatric type issues, I think that there might be just a general lack of understanding with how bad things can be. John, I'm sure you see it working with the homeless community. I know I see it working in the ER. Like, what do you do when your teenager acts out and threatens to kill your other kids and has a knife in his hand? What do you do then? Just do you just have faith, or do you take steps to intervene? I think that wisdom would call us to take steps to intervene. You see that unfortunately with foster parents a lot, bringing their kids to the ER because of whatever terrible past that child's been through, just with I cut out with behaviors that are either self-destructive or wanting to harm other people. Like, you have to physically stop them. And in the ER, we do that with the B52, which is Benadryl, 50 of Benadryl. Well, it shouldn't be 5 of Haldol. Normally it's 10 of Haldol, 2 of Ativan. That's the B52.
Well, there you go.
I was thinking the bomber.
Yes, that's
I know. That's why I love the name. It's a cool name. They're like, all right, B52 restrain, let's go. I'm like, okay, I'll get the needle.
That speaks to two things. One is I think we can certainly agree that would be the fundamentalist position, and so like I don't necessarily feel like I'm picking on John MacArthur. I do feel that these views do express something of the nature of his general ministry over the past 5 decades. They do express similar thoughts that he has always had. Simultaneously, I can agree that we are over medicating and over diagnosing everything. Like I can 100% guarantee you that there will be PTSD diagnosed on hundreds of these Columbia University protesters. I guarantee it, because our culture's stupid, and instead of prescribing sentences in jail, we're going to prescribe medication for post-traumatic stress,
especially the ones that went up against Doug Wilson's grandson.
I mean, that's
I don't know if you guys saw that
video yet, but I want to.
Yeah.
Right after this podcast. But that certainly is in line with his views. Simultaneously, you're acknowledging that we don't understand because we're not in those situations. This isn't the time. This isn't a biblical, why is post-traumatic stress not mentioned in the Bible? Certainly it is. Did you not read the Psalms? I mean, have you not heard David go in and out of highs and lows all over the place? Like, just because he didn't have the DSM-4 to 5 doesn't mean he did not obviously have some post-traumatic stress issues from killing his tens of thousands.
Forget that. Just the circumcisions alone that he performed.
Oh my gosh. And here's the reality. The difference is in biblical times or in agricultural situations, and where your livelihood came from, going to war to defend your home and your land. You didn't have time to try to reacclimate into an office situation. You went home and you loved your family, and that meant going to work. You worked the fields, you slaughtered the pigs, you were still doing those things, and
take it out on the pigs.
Right. We didn't ask you to sit in a cubicle and count beans or go to a factory and doctor widgets. Like, that's not what we asked you to do. And those are different things, like integrating back into that culture as opposed to going back and doing hard work, which is what man was made to do, are two different things. And so we don't have a context for the levels for the, like, honestly, if he had used the Columbia University students as an example, it would have been one thing, but to use the wartime examples is really what makes the clip hard to hear, because post-traumatic stress in a war situation is nothing like the grief of my grandfather passing away. Those are two totally different griefs. Those are two totally different views. And I think you mentioned it, John. Suffering is probably a more accurate biblical term for post-traumatic stress. Those are two totally different situations. I mean, my grandfather who dies, which is always a tragedy, and it's always going to cause grief. But when he dies, when he is old and has lived a life and has a legacy of godliness, that is a big difference than someone, I mean, I just remember, and I didn't even have I was too young and stupid to have the right process in my pastoral care to really unpack the issues. And he was talking to Pops, Elder John. So thank goodness for that. But we had a person in our church early on when we first planted that was younger, that came back from Iraq and had an experience where, he had to decide whether or not to take the shot on a potential, young individual with, possibly a suicide vest. And he was a wreck at times. And you wouldn't know it all the time because he really did try to move through, but like it messed him up. It messed him up bad. And to think like that, we would just put that into the context that, like, I'm sad because grandma isn't here anymore. Like, those are totally different interactions.
Yeah, one's a normal life cycle. One's a normal life cycle type thing, and the other is a completely different type of stress and trauma altogether.
And I think that's where we have to be careful. That's why it's just a good reminder, as as pastors, we have to be careful in how we say and do things. I mean, it's kind of like the experience that I had where I'm like walking into talking about divorce on our podcast a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, this is going to be a hard one. Like, we have to be careful in how we talk about things. We have to couch them biblically. We have to understand them and know them, because we don't want to make statements that are so blanket that they become easy, because there's never anything there's nothing easy about the gospel. The gospel is always hard and messy. And when we're trying to cut things out to make it easy, that's just trying to make our life easy as opposed to doing what is biblical.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, I've had children in my sights and almost had to kill them. I praise God that I didn't have to, because we were able to find another way around it. But, we also were children with backpacks were potential, kids with bombs, because we were fighting savages who put bombs in their kids' backpacks. And so for a long time, and even now, it's still hard to see children in backpacks. Like, I can't. And I live near a school. Yeah. So it's like your brain, if you're not in the word constantly and really filling your mind, as Philippians 4 tells us, always putting what's right and holy in front of you. Yeah. My brain can quickly go back to, and my group that I go to that, guys who have experienced a lot of similar things, a lot of police officers. And I said to them all when we were talking, I said, I was like, when I tell you, if you just saw me staring at kids with a backpack with the sight of like, who's my target, I was like, you guys would arrest me on the spot because it would look terrible. And I said, I wouldn't, and I was like, and I wouldn't blame you, but because of, what we experienced, that's just how we had to be. And I don't know if we have a different direction, but I'd like to just kind of, if you guys don't mind, how we deal, maybe just give some tools in dealing with someone with post-traumatic stress, or if you're listening to this and you're dealing with it, would you mind if I just gave some of our SOPs that we work through?
Absolutely not.
Please do.
Earlier you said it was our podcast, but really, John, This is your podcast.
Our podcast is your podcast, buddy. I think that's a perfect way to wrap
Misa
up our discussion.
podcasta is a sua podcasta. That was
Yeah.
There's that Latin again.
Yeah. There's that Latin. It just keeps coming in.
Latin America.
So if you're struggling, I'm just going to give two quick 5-step things. And again, I don't want to just say like, hey, do these 5 steps and be super easy, because this is a process. But one of the things with trauma is converting that trauma in the sense of putting it into a biblical lens. So this trauma happened to me. How do I go forward? And one of them is you acknowledge it. I know it sounds simple. The first step to a problem is admitting you have a problem, right? But it is true. Acknowledging that what I experienced was a traumatic event. I'm not being a wussy, right? Like, I'm not just weak. I was like, I am weak because I'm a human, right? But I experienced trauma and it has affected me. The second thing is flush out that event in every feeling with every detail. That's best done with a pastor, with a biblical counselor, whoever you're working with, but actually flush out those in detail. And if you're the person listening, just listen to the details. They're going to be gruesome and they are not going to be fun to listen to. But it has to come out. Like, if it just stays in the brain and it stews. And one thing is if you're sharing what happened to you and people, they react in a way that it's like, man, that kind of like the red X. Well, let's avoid that guy. Or I want to take this guy around and tell his story to everyone because it's such a great story, such a great God story. Now he's my little toy that I can go around and make everyone feel good about me. And I've seen that. I've had that happen to me. I write those people off. But what happens is I start as the person who went through that, now start to isolate. And that's a no-go. Once people start isolating, suicide is right down the road. So you got to cut that isolation off. The third part is really forgiveness, either offered or asked for. Did I sin in this situation? If we're talking about someone who's a victim of sexual assault, rape, forgiveness being extended to that person who raped them, which is, again, that's not easy, right? That's not a natural thing. That's a Holy Spirit working within you to bring you to that point. But it's the same too. Did I, in my traumatic event in war, did I sin? And is that causing me the grief as a believer that I have this sin inside me now? Number 4 is theological alignment. So if I kill someone in combat, did I kill them as a murder, or did I kill them because it's my job? If I killed them, it's because of my job, or police officer. I need to have a theological realignment. What is that? What does God say about this? And what God says about me as a police officer or a military member killing an enemy or a criminal is that's what my job is. That's a service to the Lord. I'm a deacon of death, right? And we talked about that in a previous podcast. But that little nugget of I'm actually doing what God designed me to do, and it's a service to him, goes a long way in your healing from trauma. And then
if there was a book of catechisms that could help someone walk through that.
If someone would just author something like that.
That would be really convenient.
Yeah. And so, and the number 5, I always call it just Charlie Mike, which in the Army stands for continue mission. You got to find the next mission. You got to find the next thing you're going after. And that is your number 1, that's your faith. That's getting right with God, but that's your family too. But also find that service, because kind of the next thing with my method. So that's like your initial groundwork with a guy, or if you're in that situation of PTS, that's what you have to work on. Find someone to work that with you. But my method when I'm struggling, and so this might be the person who's struggling, or just to guide that person who's struggling, is number 1 is to be in the Word, specifically the Psalms. Be in the Word. And when you're having these times, like I explained before, going to Psalm 42, going to Psalm 46, in that time, memorize that scripture, right? Hide it in your heart. Be in constant prayer, especially if you know you're going. It's the same with temptation, right? To sin. If you're going to go into a situation where that context is really going to tempt you to sin, or that context may trigger you in your PTS, be in constant prayer throughout that entire time. Be in communion with God. And really, 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 really important is be in a meaningful community. Be in a church. Go to church. Don't watch church online. Go to church.
Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just get in that church and open up to those elders in your church about what is happening with you. Don't act like everything's fine in that community. Actually allow God's community to do what it's designed to do, and that's bear each other's burdens, right? So be in that community. Don't isolate, because isolation is when we start to suffocate. And you can know someone's going down that dark path if you're working with a veteran, police officer, whatever it is. They've gone through these traumatic events, whoever went through the traumatic event, and you don't see them for weeks, and they're just isolating now. They're only hanging out with other police officers or other vets. They're not comfortable around anyone else. It's like, okay, we got some real hard work to do here, because we really have to work on getting in community, be in community, be active. Number 4, literally being active physically. Do something. Like, it doesn't have to be working out every day. Go for a walk, do something, but that physical exertion helps a lot. And then number 5 is be in actual Christian service. Serve other people. Put other people first. I was working with a guy, and he just, everything was about his problem. Everything was about his, I can't get over this. I'm having all these issues. I'm having all this. I said, well, what are you doing for other people? He said, well, nothing. They need to be doing stuff for me. I said, well, that's your issue right there. You're not doing anything for anybody else. You're not actually following God's command to serve others with your spiritual gift that God's given you. And that's where that mission, that purpose comes in, and actually doing that. So I hope that helps. And that's that's a very basic on the ground method that we use with guys that come through the mission, and then also in churches.
And I would want to point out that clearly for anyone suffering from a post-traumatic stress, like war, or a traumatic sexual abuse situation, any of these traumatic situations, those are 5 steps, and they're going to need to be taken, which means that as you take them, there's going to be a process there. Mm-hmm. None of that is like instant. That's literally why John runs a recovery program. There's things to unpack there. But that's definitely,
and it's a year.
Right, there you go. So it's definitely a good thing to add to the tool belt, though. Like what John is not saying is that, if you've been raped, you should just forgive your rapist. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is we should biblically be working towards the reality that Christ forgives us of our sin, holding him on the cross. We should be moving towards forgiveness of those that have sinned against us. That's the call of the scripture, and that takes time. And it's a weighty thing. So John's trying to run through this list. I just didn't want anybody to be like, oh, John's being flippant about traumatic events. That's not at all what he's saying. He's giving you 5 steps that are a process to take. So I just want to clarify that.
And it's a different length for everyone. Some people, they can forgive sin against them very fast. And then some people, it takes a long time to get there. Right. One guy I work with, he was wrongfully put in prison for 25 years, and he really was wrongfully put in prison. That guy who put him in prison, he has a hard time, getting to the point of forgiving that person. And we're working on that. And he says, he's like, I really am working on this. I pray about it every day, and I just am not there. So, and this is someone who's been wrestling with this for years. We just continue to encourage, like you need to see your sin in the light like you said, you need to see our sin in the light of God before we can forgive others of their sin against us. But you have to work towards those steps. You can't not work towards them. However, for some people it takes 5 months. For some people it takes 5 years.
And that is certainly true. So hopefully that's something you guys can definitely use and take away. And I'm sure that once someone does come up with like a book format of ways that you can understand your role biblically as a police officer or a soldier, that'll be a great resource for those that minister with those individuals. And believe you me, you will know about it when that resource is available.
Hopefully it is soon. For those of you who are don't know what he's talking about, a chaplain friend of mine and I have published a book called The Warfighter Catechism. It's in publishing now through Wrath and Grace Publishing. And I really do pray that it helps a lot. It helps a lot of young men who are going into war, people who are already in military conflict, and then also pastors to be able to train young people. I think if you have a youth group, if your church is big enough or whatever to have a youth group, and you're not adding in warfighting discipleship to your young men, I think you're doing a disservice, because the world's only getting more dangerous. It's eventually coming. And they may be drafted to fight. We need to build a solid foundation. So that's my 2 cents.
We are excited for when that comes.
Yes, we are.
Yes, indeed.
We are very appreciative. We enjoy the many ministries of Wrath and Grace as they put out good content as well. So that will be back on when John does his book tour. So we'll have John back on for that as well. You will know.
There's a Barnes and Noble near us, John. There's a Barnes and Noble. So just do a book signing at the South Jersey Barnes and Noble.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I'll end with a funny story. One time I did a book signing. I've never published a book before, but I went to the Salvation Army and I bought a bunch of books, and I set up a table in our local mall that shut down, but it was before it shut down. And I put book signing, and I wore a suit. I sat there at the table, and people came and they were like, "What book?" And I was like, "This one." And I just signed it and gave it to them.
Bro, you ain't right, dude. What is wrong?
That was back before cell phones, like when I was in high school. So we had a good time because we didn't have these things.
Gosh.
Oh my word.
But then nobody got a hilarious video of you doing it. That would have been
back when kids had to get creative to get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Who let you set up a table in the mall? Like, what the heck?
I mean, they did eventually ask me to leave, but
this is the classic situation of like if you've ever worked in the service industry, like if you don't want to do like a particular menial task because you don't have anything right in front of you, just like walk with purpose and look like you're doing something, like you're engaged with something, and people will just be like, "Oh yeah, they're super busy." Like, you wore a suit, you had a table, you had books. It said book signing. And everybody's like, "Yeah, that guy's supposed to be here." Like,
yeah,
clearly.
We had a guy when I was in Hawaii in the Army. He walked around the battalion area with a clipboard and a pen and had a piece of paper, and he was just looking up, and he would just write something down. And he just like look up. And someone eventually asked him, like, what? Every time he was asked, he's like, "Sergeant Major's got me doing this detail," and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, Sergeant Major has him doing it." He wasn't doing anything, and then eventually the first sergeant goes, "Sergeant Major, what do you have so-and-so doing?" He's like, "I don't have him doing anything." He got
genius. That man is a genius. He is the definition of government job. That is the definition.
Yeah, so he suffered for a good 2 hours after that. But then we all high-fived him because it was great.
Dude, that's perfect. That was anyway.
Man.
Well, I hope these were John. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. You can find John. Where can they find you at? Let's say like maybe somebody wanted more information on how to help an individual, or even could direct someone to you.
Yeah. So if you can find me on Facebook. I'm John Cooper. That's me.
Not Skillet.
Yeah, not Skillet, John Cooper. You probably should just type in Niagara Falls afterwards. But you can go to the Niagara Gospel Mission website. It's niagaragospelmission.org. You can find me there, and I'm on there. You can contact us, and I can answer any questions you got. If you have homeless individual that you're trying to figure out what to do with, any questions with the military, if you want to join the military or whatever, I'll try to get back to you. So,
and if you want to give to the Niagara Gospel Mission and the work they're doing there in Niagara, New York, you can also do that on the same website. It's a one-stop shop. So I'm just throwing that out there, everybody.
Appreciate that.
I can assure you that the funds you're giving are going to doing things. John Cooper does not sit still. John Cooper constantly moves. That is a fact.
We're excitingly in the process of building a shelter for trafficked women. So that way we have a safe place for them to stay. And Niagara Falls, Buffalo is in the top 10 cities in America for trafficking. So we're trying to do our part to not only have a place for those women to escape from their pimp and trafficker, but also have a gospel hope for them. So when we have more information on all that, I'll shoot it your way. But yeah, we're in the process of that. So exciting stuff.
Perfect. That's awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time tonight, John. We hope, listener, that you have been given some tools and can think through the issues of post-traumatic stress in a biblical and clear way that honors and glorifies the Lord. Jesse, did you have anything else?
I have absolutely nothing else to add.
Yes. Well, you've had a long day. You've had a long day, brother. You need to get your rest.
I am halfway there already.
It will not make you any more beautiful, but it will make you less tired. And I don't know if we're gonna try to sync this up, because whenever we're trying to do the video as well, it never does, but it's always entertaining. Listener, we hope that you this day will
seize the faith.
Oh, a three-way.
That was great.
We'll see you next week.
I had to